Entrepreneurs are risk takers, founders says, let's go get it. And then I've got to put my banking compliance hat goes, then what?
Welcome back to my Stories of Scale podcast, hosted by me, Jonathan Herps. In the podcast, I chat with business owners and CEOs of scaling companies. It centers around their entrepreneurial journey so far and their aspirations for their companies and themselves. I'm going to apologize a little bit right now because I'm in the middle of a renovation here in the house. I've been chucked out of my office by the electricians today. There's a bit of chaos happening. I've explained that to Zaki, but if you see movement in the background, I do apologize. So today I'm speaking to Zaki Ameer. Zaki is the founder of DDP Property. Welcome.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure. So why don't we just start by the story behind your business? What got you fired up to start it, and what problem were you trying to solve?
Yeah, good question, Jonathan. I guess taking back to early days, it was in my late 20s, so I'd say around 2007, when I was buying property for myself. I was working at Westpac full-time and just looking at ways, as you would, to get ahead financially. There is a limit being employed in a large bank. There's a corporate ladder, there's politics and all of that. And internet was still fairly new. Social media was definitely starting, not something people were used to. So there was a small group of people that would get together in Parramatta, and I was referred to them, and they would talk about buying investment properties. And I just turned up not knowing anything about property, but to go, is there a way I could make some money somewhere? No different to the share market or anything like that. And a bunch of people talking about the number of properties they had. And I turned up, and it was my attitude of wanting to give it a go. And I said, what do I need to do? They said, you just got to buy cheap properties in Sydney. I am based in Sydney at the moment as we do this chat. And they said, we buy in cheap, crappy areas in the western suburbs, southwestern suburbs of Sydney, mostly housing, ex-housing commission areas, and the houses are $200,000. And you think about that, not long ago, 17, 18 years ago, where would you get anything now in Sydney for $200,000?
Yeah.
So I was working in the bank, and they said, yep, just get a 5% deposit. And away we went. And I started buying property using borrowed funds from the bank and built equity through that manner, as we call it. Didn't know what that meant back then. And I realized that there is a need for people to know what I didn't know at that point in time, which is common knowledge today, but definitely wasn't common then. And a part of that, I ended up quitting Westpac because people started coming to me using magazines, and that's print media, about how I did it and whether I could advise them on buying property. And that to date is what someone would refer to as a buyer's agent, not commonly known, I'd say 16, 17 years ago. And the problem we're technically solving is that Australia is predominantly cultured to be represented by selling agents, even though you're the buyer. You trust the seller, you had coffee with the seller, lunch, dinner with the seller, realizing that the selling agent doesn't work for you, but actually works for the seller. And no different to a lawyer being represented by two different parties. There needed to be representation by the buyer. And to this date, that's what we saw, is finding affordable properties for our clients and our buyers to create wealth.
You've been on a bit of a journey. Just to position yourself, how many staff do you have in the team now?
Right now, collectively, I guess Australian, we've got staff overseas, I'd say about 20. Approximately. Yeah.
Okay. That's really interesting. I don't know, Zaki, if you really think about that, but that puts you in the top 0.4% of businesses in the world. That number of staff.
Having 20 staff, really.
Yeah, it really does. And I generally, daily your revenue, you're in the top 0.4% of businesses. And I think one of the things founders, business owners forget to do every once in a while is actually reflect and realize that you've been, as we talked about your journey, you've been on quite a journey and you've done extraordinarily well. So congratulations.
Thank you for that. I think it's interesting, as CEOs, founders, we always want to do better. And I go, oh, Westpac has 40,000 staff. Why do I have only 20?
Yeah. Truly, do you really want to have 40,000 staff?
No, not with me in it. Definitely not.
I have to tell you, my last big CEO gig before I semi-retired and then got bored and set up my coaching and mentoring business, I had 600 staff over 19 countries, and I have no interest in going back to that.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting, that your expectation of what you want in your business and a founder wants in their business, and as it changes over time. It's
Yeah.
it's a really interesting, it's a very interesting journey. Let me get back to the questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, based on all your years of experience, and you've been running this business now for
15 years. Yeah.
10 years, okay? If you had to grow your business without running yourself into the ground, what 2 to 3 things would you focus on?
I feel looking back at the journey, because we are reliant on staff and people, sometimes I wish as AI continues to evolve, whether I could just talk to bots because they would just follow the instruction that I execute with no backlash, at least not for now. You never know where AI bots are going to go. You have to deal with them. But yeah, I think because we have to deal with stuff, like you mentioned, do I want to have 40,000 staff, and dealing even with 20 or 1 or 5, is having the right staff that fit into your culture. It is a mistake I've definitely made over the 15 years, not realizing. I think it's a journey, and life is a journey, a continuous journey about figuring out who you are, what you stand for, and then finding the people that match that. And in my journey of 15 years, I think there was a phase where I thought this is who I was and recruited staff that I thought matched that, realizing that actually doesn't match my values and my ethics. So I think if I had to grow my business, focus on is yourself first. What do I truly want? I think it's very important. I'm sure you relate to people watching. We jump into, let's make it, let's make the money, let's do the big things. And then you go back and wonder why. Why did I do all that? I would definitely, easy said and done. It's all a journey. But if someone would hear that, is spend time going, what do I really want? What does my life want to really look like? And then what are my ethics? What are my values? And find the people that match that value, ethics, and culture. And it doesn't have to be everybody. So that's what I would focus on. The second thing with staff and scaling, Jonathan, that's what you focus on, is systems, processes, and compliance have to go hand in hand. Staff, system, processes, compliance have to go hand in hand. Many times I've made the mistake of trusting and thinking she'll be all right attitude, and that does not work. And I look back at my banking days at Westpac, everything was about compliance in the banking world, and that's why it's still around.
Yeah, no, you make 2 really good points there. In fact, you make a couple of extra points in there if you think about it. One is understanding what your vision and your strategy for your business is and having that clear. Yeah, I talk about the CEOs having 4 major roles. One is, what is your vision strategy? And then talk about until everybody is so sick of it, but everybody understands it. And not only your staff, but your bankers and your shareholders and your clients and everybody else. Second one is having the right people in the right jobs, doing the right thing and doing it right. And your point about values is so spot on. We can train for productivity. We can train people to do a job. We can't train people for values.
Mm-hmm.
Your industry is a very interesting one if you think about that. There's many different types of people in the industry. And then the last 2, so strategy people have enough cash to pay for it. And the fourth one is are building executable and scalable systems.
Right.
Absolutely right on.
Yeah.
But tell me, think about the last 12 months. It's been a difficult market for you. So the last 12 months, what's one thing you'd do differently and why?
12 months, yeah. Sometimes it's such a short time frame. And you're like, wow, Christmas is around the corner. Was that yesterday? But if I was to look back about what I could, out of many, I feel, and which is the journey I'm now, is a rebrand of the company and bringing partners in place. I feel, and it's important, my parents have been in business, my grandparents have been in business, so it's in the bloodline of mine. And if I was learn from that lesson of them and implement, is rebrand and formulate an exit strategy, which is coming back to the previous question, Zaki, what do you really want? And it's a fine balance between time and money, which is the journey I'm now with. Is I've got partners in place that are coming in who are younger than me, who have got a different vision of taking it. And that's for me to step out and go, you know what, this business will probably flourish if I would step aside. And that's a big thing to face, because you don't want to tell that to yourself. But thankfully, it hasn't taken me 30 years or 20 years. It took me 15 years to say this business will flourish if I step aside. I've created the vision as long as the values are there and that follows on. Yeah. I would have started that earlier, but that's where I'm starting now. But no regrets either, because life is a journey. We've got to keep reminding ourselves that.
It's interesting you say that. I speak to my clients about building an exitable business. And it doesn't have to be that they're going to sell it. It could be stepping sideways and taking more of a call it a founder role. It could be selling it. It could be just having the business so you can take a 60, 90, 120 day holiday. So the thing, you can exit the business if you choose. And that's one of that's really the key plank of what I coach over, is building the businesses up like that. Good on you for that. Yeah, for that, having the vision, because so many business owners I speak to just, in some ways, they don't really know why they're doing it. And if they did exit the business at whatever stage, what would they do? I'm not suggesting any entrepreneur can have work-life balance totally, but having an idea of what you do outside of an identity outside of business is so important.
That's it. Your business becomes your identity. And sometimes we've got to ask, is this really my identity? And that's a tough look in the mirror. You maybe, like myself, need to be slapped around, pushed around a few times through life challenges. And hopefully you wake up and you're not waking up on your deathbed realizing this. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm not sure about your family. In addition to the renovations happening here, I've got Mystery 11 sitting over here with Influencer A. That balance of being able to do my business, run my business, but also look after Doug is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's bigger lessons. One lesson you've learned as a business owner that's completely changed how you operate. You may have already answered that.
I feel, yeah, it's who I bring in, making sure they value the values that we have in common, and compliance, systems and procedures. Entrepreneurs are risk takers, founders says, let's go get it. And then I've got to put my banking compliance hat goes, then what? And I am in the real estate industry, and buyer's agents, I'd say 15 years ago, like I mentioned, was very new. Selling agents were the norm, but I'm sure you've seen it in news, and especially with Channel 9 and Morning Herald and all of that. There's a big thing on selling agents being cleaned up, and all the consumer bodies want to clean up the real estate industry. I can see the focus on that. And definitely now there's their focus on buyer's agent, because that was a new thing for the industry, that governments have to be up to date on what's happening in the marketplace. So if you're in an industry that requires compliance, and I think industrially, thankfully, we're around compared to other countries, is because of government compliance. As much as we don't hate it, we don't like it, we also need it, because we just can't assume that things will work out. And it forces us to think about that. And I think if there are businesses out there that don't have government compliance, you shouldn't ignore it and create your own compliance before hell breaks loose within the company.
Yeah, agreed. Tell me, who's given you the best piece of advice in your life or your business, and what was it?
Coaches, mentors, which are many. I am, as you would say, the product of the people around me. So I think my biggest investment monetarily has been self-education, coaching, mentoring, all of that. And in the last 2 years, between a spiritual healer, which I've been known for 13 years, who lives in Byron Bay, and my counselor, this is personal counseling, which we ignore the personal side. We all pay for business coaches and stuff, which is, who are you, Zaki, and what do you really want to do in life? Personally, who's the Zaki when you were a kid? And I think both of them put together has given me the wake-up call going, what do I really want? Beyond business. Do you want to be a dad? I am a dad, so I have a 4-year-old child, thankfully. I've spent time with my 4-year-old son. But then I looked at my son and I go, what about me not beyond being a dad? Who am I? Because once I think somebody, or maybe my family, reminded me saying, eventually your kid's going to grow up and probably don't want to hang out with you every day, which is true. It's exactly what I did. And then you go, who am I then? And then somehow life forces you, which is why I say hopefully people don't wake up just before their deathbed. And it's a journey that you want to wake up to, saying, who am I and what do I really want to be doing?
It's a really interesting one.
Yeah.
Really interesting one. I told you earlier, we live in Barrel and we're here for a reason. It's about a lifestyle for the family.
Yeah.
We can't see, but monkey bars, trampoline, swimming pool, all of the above. And my kids are a bit older than yours. It's really interesting. Yesterday morning, my daughter said to me, Dad, can we go shopping? I need some clothes for Mum's birthday. which I really loved, by the way, wandering around the streets looking for clothes for my daughter. But and my son, I'm taking to Fiji in March with our local rugby club that he plays with, and we're going to support the seniors rugby tour. Like that stuff outside of business and outside of just being a parent and a couple is so important.
Yeah.
And I don't do it, but I really wish I could get back into sailing because that's really my passion.
Yeah.
Your CEOs and founders need a life. Okay, if we can switch a bit, can you share with me a time that you failed or hit a big challenge and what you took away from it? You told me through you've had an interesting journey.
Yeah.
Maybe reflect on one of those peaks and troughs.
Business 15 years ago was a one-man band for 1 year. Then it scaled. I was living overseas, living a good life, all of that. General managers, HR managers, all of that in place. And that was probably lasted till about 2019 when I realized most of my staff were, because fortunately, real estate involves a lot of money in terms of commission stuff. All sorts of fraudulent activities were happening within the company because of compliance.
Yep.
And these are people, you build a business with passion and then you take them as family. You make them as family, and then no different to a relationship going down or something. You take it very personally when you go, oh, how could they do that to me? I don't understand. If they wanted more money, why didn't they just ask for more money? That would be a better way of doing it. And that's when I think that was 2018, 2019, when I had to be given a wake up call going, Zaki, the world's tough out there in the business world. I've heard it through my parents and stuff, but when you live it, I'm like, oh, so I am not number one anymore that I thought I was, which I'm sure businesses and entrepreneurs, maybe they quit at that stage, maybe they fail, maybe they don't get the right help, all of that. But it was the wake up call for me to humble up and say, Zaki, go back, dig again, and dig right. Do it the right way, find the right people. Keep going. And sometimes this attitude of you've got to keep going, which is good, but sometimes you also need to stop. And we go, that's quitting. You shouldn't quit. You should keep going. With all my mentors, Anthony Robbins, whatever you back in the days, keep going, But I go, sometimes you've got to pull back, and that's okay. And that's an interesting balance, that to pull back and it's okay, but you keep going also in a different way.
You alluded to it then, so I'm just got an issue with one of my screens. Alluded to it then about perseverance. And as you say, picking yourself up when it gets hard and it gets down. It's one of the key traits. AI, I got Notebook LM to analyze 130 CEO interviews I've done. You'll just miss out on that. You'll be unfaced on the next chapter. But I fed the URLs in, and Notebook LM came up with it. I prompted it to come up with the 12 lessons from the CEOs of the 130 interviews, and perseverance was one of the key 12. Not surprising. Okay, if we can switch a little bit, Zaki, talk me through a typical day in your world. What habits keep you at your best?
I feel for myself for a number of years now, probably since 2020 when that setback happened, is focus on myself. I wake up, the first thing I do actually is I spend 15 minutes stretching, not really meditating. I try meditating, which whatever works for you. And that's the thing, you hear different stories. You've got to find the balance that is right for you, not what somebody else tells you.
Yep.
So for me, it's actually stretching. So I spend about a good 15 minutes stretching, shower, get on with it. But in between my days, I always do something for myself, whether that is go for a walk, have lunch, it could be anything, go to the gym or something for yourself that you can end the day saying, I did something for me, as opposed to I just ran my company. Or I was a dad, which is on 2-3 days a week. I was a dad looking after my son because he's 4 years old at home. But I still want to tell myself I did that. And I've made it a rule that I need to do something for my day, wait for me. And that comes down to knowing what yourself is. And I feel great that no matter what happened today, I did something for myself.
Excellent. Any other habits that you have, productivity habits, etc.? It's one of the things I always get asked.
This came from my hairdresser one day when I was cutting my hair.
I also don't have that sort of case.
And I had I had one phone because you are your business. So you have one phone, it's not like you have, and then she goes, how do you keep up with all these messages on your WhatsApp? Because most of our teams are run remotely. And she's like, why don't you get another number? And then she just gave me this idea maybe 2, 3 years ago. And I said, yeah, that's right. And I just, once you get a great idea, you've got to act and you've got to implement. Never think. That's the other thing. Never think, just act, and then perfect it later on. And then I just moved everything. So my phone is on another, all my work's on another phone, and even my other personal phone, which my key staff leadership team have, the notifications are permanently switched off. And it's basically, I value me, and then I will look at it if needed. Because it is very rare hell is breaking loose, and if it is, they will call, which that rarely happens. That keeps me productivity, meaning my mind is clear to do what is important, as opposed to being pulled by everybody else.
Yeah. Great point. You mentioned your leadership team. What do you think is the number one trait of a great leadership team?
I feel aligned values, definitely aligned culture to my culture, the culture I want to create, where, the culture of doing the right thing, especially in real estate, looking after our clients, doing it ethically, all of that. You want that fit, a can-do attitude also, as opposed to, oh no, this is not for me, or a solution-orientated attitude. I feel that if you get those people that match those values, you have a great team that basically it's an extension of yourself that you've multiplied, that you can rely on. And then you just check in and say, is everything great? Yep, everything's great. And if there's any guidance, you provide guidance.
Great. And you mentioned check-in. So, okay, to build a great leadership team, how do you make it happen? Talk to me about that checking in and your rhythms and that sort of thing.
Because the teams run remotely, that's deliberately done. I want to create a culture where people want to work from home as opposed to come into the office, and not monitor by 9 to 5, but monitor more by KPIs and achievements. Checking in is a quick WhatsApp voice message saying, hi, how are you doing? Just checking everything is okay. Yeah. It's definitely important to have a meeting, bringing a few people in the leadership team. I don't think it should be too often or too spaced out. And that comes down to how you feel and how your organization runs. I feel daily check-ins are important, being in touch with them. And also then whether it be weekly catch-ups between the team, I think that's important also. And because we run remotely just like this, where people can have an open forum. And then really sometimes I think of mediators, and I feel then my role becomes more of a mediator. I'm hearing problems, hearing solutions, being a middle party and keeping the peace in the family.
It's a very good description. Okay, last 2 questions. What books, podcasts, tools, resources would you recommend to other business owners?
I'm still old school. People think I look young, but I was born in 1979. So I do say that I'm a 70s boy, but it was in December, so 80s. But I'm a print person or CD person because it was really print cassette CDs. And now it's whatever it is now you make of. But I think the old books, be it Jim Rohn, Anthony Robbins' mentor, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, all of them, they hold today. The How to Win, the Dale Carnegie book applies today. You don't have to be so great. And we all see with TikTok and everything, new stuff. And I go, gosh, there's a lot of fluff. But there's not really people talking about the old stuff that is simple and people get it. And I think if you can find a way to elaborate on that, people will listen.
It's interesting you say that. There's very little new. Yeah, most of the lessons that I teach and coach go back to Jim Collins, it goes back to Peter Drucker, it goes back to these gurus of the past. Yes, things change with technology, but most of the principles don't. Yeah. Okay, one last piece of advice to business owners out there. What's a single action that you think maybe they should take now?
I feel we ought to do a personal audit, give ourselves permission to do a personal audit. We don't give ourselves the permission to audit our own life and just auditing everybody else's life and the company and everything we do. I guess the theme of this podcast that I've given is take care of yourself personally. We do get burnt out on a day-to-day basis. Even with all the stuff I just suggested to do, I will still feel burnt out. But I think I'd feel worse off if I didn't do it. And I think give yourself permission to relax, give yourself permission to do something for yourself, and give yourself permission to see, is what I'm doing what I truly want to be doing? And if it isn't, we'll be okay with it and find a way to exit out of it in a staged manner, and that's okay. and maybe be involved in with your baby in different forms. But once you have that mindset, things will happen, and the vision, people will pop up.
Great advice. I just happen to have a couple of tools here. If anybody wants a tool to help identify where you should be focused, etc., please give me a screen. Okay, Zaki, so how do people get in contact with you?
Website easiest, ddpproperty.com.au. While we're on it, a little sales pitch. Make sure you look after your wealth financially and your properties. As business owners, we just keep reinvesting in the business. And I always say, make sure you invest in yourself personally. So if you ever want to find a great cheap property that's going to do well, you do contact us.
Zaki, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Cheers.
Cheers.